Hello, let's see. Right. Hello and welcome to, let's see, part 5, 6, 7, part 8! And we're at 1910. So I've added some things in along the way. Anyway, 1910. What happened in Dreadnoughts from around the world in 1910? Well, let's see. We have the Corvair class. Yes, the French have finally entered Dreadnought construction. Sorry. Just when I see this class, who hurt them? I have never seen a ship before which I would describe as saddle-backed. Well, no, I have whenever I've seen this class, but I black it out from my memory. It does look like a saddleback tank. And here's what I don't understand. It is now 1910. The Royal Navy have 13.5-inch Orions and HMS Lion coming into under construction. They've had Dreadnoughts in service for nearly 5 years. Cuniberti's paper has been out for 7 years. The French are finally building a Dreadnought, and it looks as close to a pre-Dreadnought as you can possibly imagine a Dreadnought looking. In fact, it has 12 12-inch guns, or 305mm, in 6 twin turrets, with a broadside of 10. At least they're not making any attempt at suggesting those wing turrets are going to fire across the ship. I have to salute them on that one. I have to respect that. They've got an average belt. But it's... what's it being built to fight? Who's it being built to take on? The older Dreadnoughts in service? That's a great thing. I'm building a Dreadnought now that will take on all the ones that came before it, but is none of the ones which are its contemporaries, because they all have bigger guns. But, again, I go my own way. Why? Gets even worse when you realise how many of these actually get into service. They have 24 Nicholas boilers and 2 steam turbine sets. Now, here's the thing. They measure it in metric horsepower. So when you see PS, that means that's the symbol for metric horsepower, which is always slightly more fun, but I have had to go with conversions, and I've checked my own maths against the Wikipedia maths, because I found the people in Wikipedia do tend to do the maths quite well, and that makes 27,617 shaft horsepower. Roughly speaking. So, fun. 22 5.4-inch guns. You're going to bring up, probably, if you're responding to this one, fighting in the Mediterranean, and say the Corvair class makes sense. Fighting in the Mediterranean. No, it doesn't. Because we'll be getting onto what the other Mediterranean powers are building. It's a case of, you are building this ship. Wonderful. Why? Literally no one else in the world of the major powers is thinking that this is a good idea anymore. But you are building this ship. I appear to be possibly going to be joined by a fluffy research assistant. I'm not sure. Who knows? No. Sadly, potential sighting of FRA is overly reported, as he decided that rather than visit with his papa, who is recording videos, he would take the biscuit and run. He's a dog after my own heart. Anyway, let's get away from this. The Wyoming class. Here's an example of what else is being built in the world. 26,000 tons, fully loaded. 12 coal-fired superheating Babcock and Wilcox water tube boilers, supplying 4 Parsons steam turbines, taking 28,000 shaft horsepower with a top speed of 20.5 knots. Okay, not that slow compared to other battleships, but it's a little bit on the slow side. But what can she say? 12-inch guns in 6 twin turrets. And yes, that is 4 at the rear. That is what you're seeing. So she can get a broadside of 12 guns from 12. This can get a broadside of 10 guns from 12. This one does have a top speed of 21 knots. That's good. But, yeah. 21 single 5-inch guns. The Wyoming class are cute. They are lovely ships, but you can almost taste when you're looking at these ships that the Americans are looking for something more. The Americans are trying to work to something more. And you have to think about this one. This has got for 6 twin turrets to get the same firepower as the Dante Alighieri. The Dante Alighieri, by the way, with its 4 treble turrets, has a bigger broadside than the Corvair class. I'm just saying, come on, France, you held off for so long. You can produce either great ships or terrible ships. When you've held off for that long, I'm hoping for something great, and I get a saddleback. Now, the Wyoming class, we can be as critical as we like about the mast design, but the Americans did have a very sensible reason for this. They felt that that mast was most likely to stand up to the operating conditions around their coasts. Okay. And they are pretty well armed ships. 5 to 11 inches of armour. The Americans haven't yet approached the all or nothing scenario. They are doing armour all round, and yeah, it's a good design. It's a stable ship, and again, the British are probably very happy they've gone for 10, 13.5-inch guns because on the Orions, because that allows them to stand in a firefight against this. Remember, the British have to are supposed to be the world leaders. That's their whole security base, is based on the foundation of the Royal Navy being supreme. This means they need to do 2 things. 1, they need to look like they're at the technological head of everyone, or at least not far behind. And 2, they probably have to be the biggest, have the most. So far they're doing that quite well. And here is the Italian response to that oh so pretty Corvair. The Conte de Cavour class. 13 12-inch guns. I never thought the Italians would go for 13, but they do. And you'll notice that's a broadside of 13. Yes, that's 3 treble turrets and 2 double turrets. And they look fairly pretty, but you wouldn't want to be in a Corvair against one. 20 water tube boilers supplying 4 steam turbines. These can get up to a speed of 21.5 knots, so they've got a half-knot advantage over the Corvair. They have 18 single 120mm guns, that's 4.7 inches to those who like to use British standards. 14 76.2mm guns, or 3-inch guns. Again, this is sounding like a modern Italian construction. So many 76mm going around. And 3 torpedo tubes. They look a very, very nice design. They are a very well made design for their period. And let's be honest. They are built. The Italians are basically saying we are the preeminent Mediterranean power. No, we can't take on the British. We're not going to try and take on the British. But we've got 13 12-inch guns. And we can fire a broadside of 13. What's everyone else got? Well, there's the... We'll be talking a bit later about the Austro-Hungarians. They also produce good, well-designed ships. And then there's the French and the Spanish. Well, let's be honest, the Spanish España class, I love them, but they are not standing up in a fight against that thing. To be fair, the forward guns on one of those would probably wipe out an España class. Or the aft guns, either way. Corvair class? No. They're going to have to call the British to come and help them out if they want to fight the Italians. They just haven't got the firepower. You see, in battleship fighting, there are three things which matter, as we always talk about. Armour, speed, and firepower. Well, here's the dirty little secret. You can put on a load of armour and sacrifice speed. And then the enemy can run away. You can sacrifice armor to gain speed. Then you can get away, but you might not be able to stand up in a fight against the enemy. The way you get round that is you make sure you don't have to stand up in a fight against the enemy. You pack the biggest possible punch and guns you've got, the most accurate targeting system you've got, and you make sure you decimate them before they can fire enough rounds at you to hit you. So, speed of fire, accuracy of fire, range of fire, and the hitting power of the fire really starts to matter. So it's not just people liking bigger, better the whole time that's driving gun design here and gun growth. It's the idea and the concerted belief that if they are going to be firing this many shells at you and you are armoured to take that many shells, you won't be able to take them forever. So the bigger the hits you land, and the more of those hits you land quickly, the less likely you are to take those hits. Because the best way of stopping the enemy shooting at you is sinking them. That tends to stop shooting very quickly. You can also talk about diplomacy and all these things, but once the shooting started, diplomacy tends to take a bit of time to actually kick in. So once shooting started, the best way to stop the shooting is to stop them shooting. That's why you want more guns. That's why you have the Conte de Caval class. And you have the Tegerhoff class. Again, I have no doubt in a fight they could take the Corbairs. In fact, I'm 100% sure they could take the Corbairs. The Italians, interesting enough, have one more gun. They have one more turret, but they only have one more gun, as this has 4 treble turrets. So it's a kind of interesting of 13 versus 12. That's not enough to make it an easy decision if they're engaging. And this would be a hard fight, because the Tegerhoff are built well. Please note here, though, this is Austria-Hungary's first foray into building a dreadnought. Look at it! Honestly, it's better than most of the German first forays. By a long margin. Yes, you can argue they're learning something from them. But it's also better than the French first foray. I would say it's up there with the Americans, the Italians, and the British. Who I am consistently, as you might have noticed, pointing out are the ones who are pushing technology. The treble gun turret. The Regia Marina is now on its 2nd generation of treble turret. The Royal Navy hasn't gone the treble turret, but that's because they've gone the 13.5 inch. They've gone up rather than having more guns. The Americans, I think, are probably going to edge towards it, but they are pushing other things. They're trying to get efficiency, endurance, and firepower. They're trying to push for a fast battleship. That's what they're looking for, because that makes sense for the American battle line. What do the Austro-Hungarians realize? Before they get anywhere, they have to fight their way through the Adriatic. There is no hope of them getting anywhere if they can't fight their way through the Adriatic. So everything has to be first focused on how you're going to win in the Adriatic. And this is not a bad design to go for that. Because think about it, the Adriatic is narrow. So they've got 6 guns firing forward and 6 guns firing aft. The Conte de Cavour only has 5 forward and 5 aft. So yes, broadside on broadside, the Conte de Cavour has the advantage of a single gun. But forward or aft, onto forward or aft, the Tegenhoff class has an advantage of a single gun. It matters where you're going to fight and how you're going to fight. I get into a lot of discussions with people who find my objections to the Nelsons, the G freeze and the N freeze, they wonder why I object them so much, because they make such great engineering sense. They do. They make great engineering sense. They allow you to have the whole machinery plant in one section. They allow you to have all the armament in another section. They allow you to have the armor. You can concentrate everything. I think usually point out 2 main problems with it. One, and this will sound terrible, but we've all seen the pictures of the planes which come back with bullet holes in them. And so the first mapping of it, their story goes, history does actually back this up, they were looking at those places and going, well, these are the places that our aircraft get hit, so they're in the places that need to be armoured. But those are the bullet holes in the aircraft which got back. The places where you don't have bullet holes are the places where if an aircraft gets shot, it goes down. When you realise that your information is a false positive, next you to guide your thinking. I don't think you save anything by concentrating your weapons forward. You have a whole section you can't cover. You have... What's the advantage in machinery-wise? Well, you just have to design your hull better. I consider it more the engineers trying to hide behind fancy solutions than actually a fancy solution. This class are a well-designed class. They have balanced firepower all around, which means if they're in a big firefight, i.e. a Jutland-style firefight, they're still very useful. Still very useful, just as the N3s would be. They'd be incredibly useful, and the Rodneys. However, if they're in a running firefight, like, let's say, Matapan, or Sirte, or Dogger Bank, they're still incredibly useful. Or all the battles which take place in the Adriatic, they are still incredibly useful. Whereas you think about it, if you're in a running fight with a system in a ship, and I'll get into this in, which is all focused around its guns being forward or guns being aft, well, if that's my capital ship escorting my convoy or my task group, and the enemy capital ships are trying to hunt me down as I'm trying to avoid them because they are more than me, then what is my options? Well, for that ship to successfully engage, it has to start zigzagging, starters to fire over its shoulders. That's going to slow down its rate of progress and allow them to possibly to catch up and get into gun range. I'm also going to have to possibly detach other ships to defend it. Or alternatively, it's going to have to turn around and engage them. And okay, that brings its guns to bear, lovely. and gives the smallest profile for them, but that means it's heading that way towards the enemy, and my task group is going that way. Basically, the design of the Enfrees and of the Nelsons only makes sense if they are working with other battleships that can cover the angles they can't, without doing some very interesting maneuvers. Tangenhoffs are cool. 12 5.9-inch guns and 18 2.6-inch guns. I think it shows you what kind of warfare they're expecting. If you're having that many 2.6-inch guns, I think they're expecting motor torpedo boats. They are expecting to fight the Italians. The Rivadavia class. Oh, so cute. But they are also the only dreadnoughts not built by a British company in the South American dreadnought race. Which is kind of unusual, considering Britain and Argentina at this point, despite modern relationships, have actually quite a good relationship going on. The Americans work extra hard to try and make it a bad relationship, though, and probably bribed quite a lot of people. And the reason I say this is because this ship has 12-inch guns, and Wyoming class has 12-inch guns, but that has a broadside of 12. This is a broadside of, well, you can theoretically fire 12, but they're those lovely pesky wing turret things again. So, when you can build a better ship than that, and do build a better ship than that, but don't supply it, that's when I question your level of efficacy. Nearly 28,000 tons, 18 Babcock-Wilcox spoilers connected to 3 Curtis-geared turbines, 3 shafts, able to do 22.5 knots, which is pretty darn cool. That means there are some of the faster battleships. They have a super cruising speed of 15 knots, for which they can keep up for 7,000 nautical miles, or a standard cruising speed of 11 knots, which they can keep up for 11,000 nautical miles, which is quite darn cool. If you can have a cruising efficiency, and I know they don't use the sort of phrase super cruising in this period, but I'm using it because it makes sense of it. It's a phrase which we understand today. The fact that they find that they do have a higher cruising level as well as a lower cruising level, that they can economically and maintain machinery up quite happily, it's pretty darn cool. Engineering-wise, efficiency-wise, these are great ships. As I said, below the gun level, they are great ships. The Americans have really put in their technology. At the gun level and above, I think the Americans, I'm not sure what was happening to them. And then we have the whole middle structure, which we've been over before. Oy, caramba. Anyway, how many dreadnoughts are now in the world? It's 1910. Well, the Royal Navy has 10 in service and 11 under construction. The Germans have 11 under construction and 4 in service, so they're already slightly falling behind. The French have some in construction, but we will ignore them. The Italians have some lovely ships in construction. Not quite at 5, but they're working up to it. The Americans are level pegging, 4 in service and 4 in construction. Cute. The Brazilians have a couple in service. Japan has some under construction. Australia has one under construction. Spain, of course, has some under construction. And Argentina has some under construction. It's all fun in the world. And this is the point, really. In 1910, it's calmed down a bit. It got a bit frantic in 1909, but in 1910 it's calmed down a bit. Or at least on the face of things it has. But honestly, what tends to happen is they take time to work out what their response is going to be. Which might explain why 1911 is another two-parter. I don't know. So we've got coming up. We've got on the 3rd of June, we have AdFab, Coastal Command 1920s and 1930s. Also, at some point this week, there is going to be a post go live, comment post, on this channel. And if you would like a live on going through the the dreadnoughts from around the world and the battle cruisers and answering questions on the 30th of April, and provided I survive my research trip, touch wood, then if enough people like it, enough people comment under it, they'd like it alive, and some people perhaps suggest doing questions they want for it, when it comes up, I will do one. On the 30th, I'll do a sort of brewship special. Right then, what else we got? 10th of June, favourite dreadnoughts, battleships and battle cruisers. Yes, well, that's going to be my favourites of all time. I said I will add an extra brewships in on the 30th of May on a live. Questions for the existing dreadnoughts and battle cruisers. I think there's a lot of love for them. And on the 31st of May, there is Armchair Admirals. And I think we are warming up for some more BT bashing, though, yeah, he's always done enough to deserve it. He always has. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you've liked this video. If you do like, please like, and maybe share. It's always nice when I see them shared on Twitter. It's quite fun when I get them seen them shared on Twitter. That's at AC_Naval History is my Twitter. And if you fancy joining Patreon for discussion, there's a link down below. No, Discord for discussion, there's a link down below. If you fancy supporting my research, it's always very generous, very kind of people. Please go and join the Patreon. You do get to vote on the Patron's choices and suggest topics, and then I pick 6 or 8 of the suggestions, and then they go to a vote, and there's a vote currently live while these videos are up for what I'll be doing in June for June's patron choices, so that's why they're left blank at the moment. And thank you. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos, and press the little bell as well if you want to get an alert when I go live. Thank you, and take care.